Well, let me tell you, college football fans, and this is Bill Connolly, who we like a lot because he's able to do some things that, with statistics and numbers that aren't too analytical to me, but they have reason within them where they make some sense. Sometimes he gets a little off base with me, but Caleb and I both like Bill Connolly a lot with ESPN. So here's how he rated Joe Milton as the most important player in college football. It's a top 25 list, not top 25, not top 20, not 15, not top 10, not top 5. Number 1, Caleb Calhoun. Your thoughts on Joe Milton being the most significant, most important player in the 2023 football season? How does that strike you?
Surprising until I think about it, and it makes sense with Connolly's standards. What Bill Connolly is saying in this article is that which players are most likely to have the largest impact on the outcome of their teams, and are those teams potential playoff contenders? I don't think anybody would say, Tennessee's number 10 in the coaches poll. Everybody agrees that Tennessee could at least be a playoff contender this year. Doesn't mean they will be, but they could be. Well, if they're going to be, no team is going to be more dependent, or no team's success is going to be more dictated by their quarterback than Tennessee with Joe Milton given Josh Heupel's offense. And therefore, Milton, because of the question surrounding him, really does all of a sudden become the most important player. And just for context, Drew Aller at Penn State is number 2. That's another quarterback who there are a lot of questions about, but there's a lot of hype behind, and people don't know how that's going to end up with Penn State because they're loaded on the offensive line. Tennessee loaded at the skill positions, and the question does come down to Joe Milton.
Well, yeah, and I know that's the argument you're going to make, and I can't argue with any of it, but let me play devil's advocate. For instance, let me throw a couple of names at you that were on his list a little bit further down. So Joe Milton, number 1 of the most important players in college football, and so strong that Bill Connolly of ESPN, his lead line is it couldn't be anyone else. But let me play devil's advocate a little bit. If Carson Beck is better than Stetson Bennett, or at least as good, or halfway as clutch, then Georgia's winning a national title based off their roster, in my opinion. So he, to me, would be more important than a guy who hopes to get in the college football playoff. Again, I understand the argument, and I'm not necessarily against it, but let me throw that out there and see how that strikes you.
I think the bigger problem for Georgia is that it's not Carson Beck. It's, can Georgia, and we saw this last year, can the rest of their team, no matter how loaded they are, maintain the same edge mentally week in and week out? That gets harder and harder to do the more and more you win. And so even if Carson Beck is playing well, Dave, I think Georgia's success will come down to, will their players maintain their mental edge enough to make sure they don't have a slip up anywhere? And
you're telling me that if Georgia is a clone of senior year, final year, last year, Stetson Bennett, that they could still fall short of the college football playoff?
Yes, easily. They could still fall short, and they could fall short. It reminds me of, look, I'll go back to it, 2013 Alabama-Auburn. That lucky kick 6 game that I think is the greatest regular season game in history. What really stood out to me about that was Alabama was 2-time national champs. They were undefeated. They were number 1. There was an incredible level of complacency. Dave, how hard is it to keep maintaining the motivation and edge when you keep winning? Eventually, to quote a previous president, you do get sick of winning sometimes.
That's true. Let me throw another name at you out of Alabama before I remind you that What the H today is brought to you by Zen Sports. Zen Sports. Yeah, man, they're your new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares. On Zen Sports, what you see is what you get with their cash rewards program. You get a lot of cash. For a welcome bonus, earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with the code HOOKED. That's right, HOOKED, HOOKED. Unlimited 5% cash back. Do not forget the promo code. Support our advertisers. We appreciate that. Keep betting, keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month after that. And refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports is bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Zen Sports. Download the app today. All right. He's at number 5 is Tyler Buckner, Jalen Milroe, or Ty Simpson. In other words, whoever wins the quarterback competition in Alabama. That could turn Alabama, if they get strong quarterback play, because they had to have it last year to be a college football playoff contender, right? You would agree with that.
Yes. Yes. Anybody who watched that Tennessee-Alabama game knows that without Bryce Young, Tennessee's winning that game by 30.
Yeah. So if one of those guys step up anywhere close to a Bryce Young level, then Alabama is a college football playoff knock at the door type of team. Why wouldn't you go with them over Joe Milton? I guess the overall point that I'm making is that Joe Milton doesn't have as much room to make mistakes, Caleb, as some of these other quarterbacks and some of these other players on the list, because 1 to 85, their rosters are still better for the most part on this list than Tennessee, especially on the top end.
Well, that would mean it's even more important. Joe Milton's even more important. Now, I would actually agree with you that Alabama is probably closer than Georgia so I would actually have Alabama's situation at number 2, right behind Joe Milton, because I'm with you. I think if they could get good quarterback play, I think they're pretty set in a lot of other places and they should be elite. And here's the other point I think that's going to happen with Alabama this year. Tennessee fans know this firsthand, and you know this firsthand covering Tennessee. Sometimes when you have a superstar quarterback in college, the rest of the team, unfortunately, takes plays off or doesn't feel the same intensity or urgency.
Yeah.
I think Tennessee was doing that with Peyton Manning a lot in 97. And I think without Peyton Manning, I think one of the reasons they won it in 98 was because a lot of players said, oh, we need to step up. Peyton Manning's gone. We can't just fall back on him. And I think you're going to see that a lot of that with Alabama this year, at which point it will all come down to whether or not the quarterback is competent.
No, I do get your point, but if we're talking about them being a factor in the college football playoff, which I guess I kind of twisted the question, then if Carson Beck's as good or better than advertised, if an Alabama quarterback emerges, for that matter, if an Ohio State quarterback, I'm not sure who they have tapped as a starter at this very moment, but they are not only knocking at the door, but they're probably in it if they get that kind of quarterback play. Tennessee could get that kind of quarterback play, could get very good quarterback play. They could get the same play they got last year and, slip. They could lose to Georgia as they did last year. They could lose to Alabama as they didn't last year, but it took some pretty strong late game heroics and it's on the road. I just think that when we write the book of the 2023 season, there will be other guys that demand more coverage than Joe Milton, unless Joe Milton is absolutely astonishingly good and Tennessee makes the college football playoff. Then all of what I just said is moot. Tennessee makes the first college football playoff, potentially plays for a national championship for the first time since 98. Before that was 47 years. Yes. Then, by golly, Bill Connelly nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. But to me, it has to be that for Joe Milton to be the most important player. I'm not trying to nitpick his column. I hope that makes sense, Caleb.
Well, okay, but think about this for a minute. If Joe Milton is as good as as he possibly could be, as like the most optimistic person predicting for Joe Milton this year is predicting, if he's that good, if he's as good as Travis Case thinks he's going to be, okay,
he's Hendon Hooker all over again.
Yes, exactly. Yes, if he's Hendon Hooker all over again. Well, last year Tennessee was a weird suspension away from playing in the college football playoff. That's how close they were. So that we're talking difference of right there or not there at all. With Alabama or Georgia, if the quarterback plays not where it needs to be, they could still make the playoff. And if it is where it needs to be, they're probably in, but they're not fully out of it if the quarterback plays not where it needs to be. If Tennessee's quarterback plays not where it needs to be, they have no shot at the playoff. They have no shot at finishing in the top 10, honestly, at that point.
Pretty good point. Billy Bob Cooter giving me a hard time. I agree with Dave. Bench Joe, start Nico. I said that like in January, but can you back me on that, please, Caleb? That I have not said that in like since February.
He hasn't said it since spring ball. That's what we'll see. He hasn't said it since
even
spring
before
ball.
that. Actually, if you remember, in January, I was told he showed up. That Nico showed up with a lot of maturity, and that Joe Milton was like, I'm not going to be able to coast through this offseason. That's what I was told. So that even goes back earlier than spring ball. But I did say it, and I'm of the opinion that I would like to see that guy Nico play a little bit.